Hello, I'm Dave Walker, Comptroller General of the United States and head of the U.S. Government Accountability Office, also known as GAO. I'm doing this video to help you understand the current state of our federal financial condition and our long-term fiscal outlook and what the potential implications are. To do that, I've put together a few graphics that might help to illustrate where we've been, where we are, and where we're headed. In this first graphic, you can see that in 1965, the federal government spent 43% of its budget on defense. Fast forward 40 years, in 2005, that 43% was down to 20%. Where did the money go? It went to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. In 1965, we didn't have Medicare or Medicaid. Now it represents 19% of the budget. In 1965, 7% of the federal budget was for interest on the federal debt, the same as 2005. However, not for long, because we're adding debt at or near record rates and interest rates are starting to head up. Our next graphic will help to illustrate the numbers for 2004 and 2005. And you'll see that depending upon how you keep score, whether it's on a cash basis or an accrual basis, which is what the private sector and in fact the federal government has to do for financial reporting, you'll see that on a cash basis, our deficit went down from fiscal 2004 to fiscal 2005 by a little over $90 billion to $318 billion. But on an accrual basis, our deficit went up to an all-time high, $760 billion, a $144 billion increase. What's shocking is that while some would have you believe that the reason we're running these deficits is because of the war on terrorism and incremental Homeland Security costs, that's just not factually accurate. In fact, whether you pick the $318 billion number or the $760 billion number, only about $100 billion of those amounts have anything to do with Iraq, Afghanistan, and incremental Homeland Security costs. And yet, the nation has not been in a recession since November of 2001, and we had among the highest economic growth rates of any industrialized nation on earth last year. Clearly imprudent. What's more shocking, however, is what our next graphic shows. In the last 5 years alone, the total liabilities and unfunded commitments of the United States government have gone up from $20.4 trillion to $46.4 trillion. Now, I don't know about you, but I'm just getting used to billions, much less trillions. Keep in mind, a billion has 9 zeros to the right. A trillion has 12 zeros to the right. You really need to write it down to get a sense for how big these numbers are. Now, what do we mean by liabilities and unfunded commitments? Well, liabilities, you understand. It's the same thing for the private sector as the public sector. But we're adding also the amounts for the difference between what we've promised for Social Security and Medicare over the next 75 years and how much in dedicated revenues through payroll taxes and premiums for Medicare that we're likely to receive. So this represents the unfunded commitment, how much money we'd have to have today invested at Treasury rates to deliver on that promise. So from $20.4 trillion to $46.4 trillion in 5 years. Now, how can we translate that to numbers that you and I and others might be able to understand and appreciate better? Well, it's $156,000 for every man, woman, and child in the United States. We should be ashamed of that. If you translate the numbers to full-time workers, $46.4 trillion represents $375,000 for every full-time worker. In America, the most common is a dual-income household for a variety of reasons. So that's like having a $750,000 mortgage and no house. And these numbers are going up every second of every minute of every day because we're still incurring deficits at or near record rates. We're adding to our debt burden. Our demographics are working against us, and the miracle of compounding is working against us as well. Because after all, when you're an investor, the miracle of compounding works for you. When you're a debtor, and the United States is the largest debtor nation, the miracle of compounding works against you.